Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm here once again to bring you the Movie Monday review series. Um, I'm back doing this again, pretty much. I bought this series in 4 years ago. Well, 4 years ago, not quite yet. I started it in December of 2014, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been January of 2015. I'm not exactly sure, but I know it was towards the end of 2014 I started this series. And it's been kind of like an on and off thing, mainly because I always start it and then I get too busy and then I end up stopping it. So I'm gonna bring it back and hopefully it can be a weekly event again, which it never really was. Ended up being a weekly event, but hopefully it can turn into a weekly thing, or I'm hope either I'll just put it back for a few weeks and then get too busy and end up going away from it and then putting it back again. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Um, Well, obviously, I said in the channel update video that this series was going to come back, um, and I would do it every week. I obviously talked about the different types of movies that I would review. Well, obviously, that's changed a lot now because I have a class every week called Film and Society. We watch movies in that class, and there's more to it than that, but I'm not really going to go into too much detail about it. But we watch movies in the course, and he's probably going to have them look at it in a certain way. I really can't tell you too much like how the course really will go. I only had the class once, and I don't really know. We haven't had like a real class because we haven't had the we've only done like the syllabus stuff the first day and stuff like that. We haven't had like a full day where we sat down and had the class. We usually watch a movie every class, and then at the end we discuss it, and then we do an assignment on it, and it's every Wednesday. Now, it'd be nice if it was every Monday because then it could tie into the movie Monday reviews. But what I'm going to do is there's 12 movies that we're going to watch. I won't really go into detail about what they are. You'll just have to watch throughout the next 12 weeks of this series if it lasts that long. Um, and I'll review every Monday. I'll watch I'll go to the class and watch the film Wednesday, and then every Monday I'll rewatch the film and review it on this channel. Now, one of the movies won't get reviewed because I've already seen it. I might review it again though, because maybe my perspective will be different than what it was when I watched it and reviewed it last year. But obviously that's TBD. So I was originally supposed though to start out reviewing The Purge, but um, considering the fact that um, I don't want to do like a start a series and then go away from it because I'm going to be doing these 12 movies. I'm pretty much just going to do like movies that had like that only had one movie and didn't have any sequels or anything like that. It was just the original. Now, obviously, this week's going to be different because last week I didn't do a Movie Monday review series because I wasn't in Massachusetts. I was in North Carolina and coming back and didn't get back till late at night last week. So I'm gonna do two today. So I figured the best movie to start with would be Neighbors. I really don't think I could say it's the best one, but I figured I've been saying I'm gonna review this movie for a few for about a year or so now. So I figured I'd get to it now since I have the time. So let's do just that. So yeah, pretty much today I'm gonna do two Movie Monday reviews. I'm gonna review the first Neighbors, and then the next one I'm gonna review Neighbors 2. Whatever. Then I know it has like some sort of title, so that's pretty much going to be the purpose. Um, that's pretty much gonna be what happens. So let's just get right into this movie. It was directed by Nicholas Stoller, and it was produced by Evan Goldberg, Seth Rogen, and James Weaver. I guess you can kind of see with who that since Seth Rogen produced the film, you can kind of see why the film maybe was what it was. It was written by Andrew J. Cohen and Brendan O'Brien. I don't think think that's how you say that last name, but whatever. And the music was done by Michael Andrews. The cinematography was done by Brandon Twost, and then it was edited by Zen Baker. The production company that produced the film was Good Universe and Point Grey Productions, and it was distributed by Universal Pictures. And the movie has two release dates because one of them aired during like one of the during a film festival that's called SXSW, which is pretty much a film festival that's done um, every March in Austin, Texas. And this and it this was aired on March 8th, 2014, and then it aired in the United States and probably everywhere else on May 9th, 2014. Um, and the movie had a budget of $18 million, so a lot of money went into this movie. And at the end of the movie, I'll talk about how much money it made and then give my thoughts on it. Right now, I'm just going to give my overall review on it. Now, the thing is I've sometimes found when reviewing movies that when I review them scene by scene, it gets boring and the video just ends up dragging and being wicked long. So I'm not really going to do that. I might do it a little bit. Um, but I'm just going to kind of talk about like the big important stuff and kind of see what happens. Talk about like because in this movie the storylines go all over the place. So if I've tried to review it scene by scene, um, I would it would just make the video really drag and really sloppy. So yeah, so pretty much the beginning portion of the film, the first about 12 minutes, um, is and obviously this movie's a comedy. They're gonna find that out as I go through it, but I should probably mention that. The first 12 minutes or so of this movie is kind of going through the couple. I have their names written down. Going through the couple. Yeah, it's going through the couple. Mac um Radner and Kelly Radner. I don't think that's how you say the last names, but I'm probably not gonna say the last names really all that much throughout this film, so it really doesn't matter. And they have and from what we know when we first see the film is that um they're a couple that just moved into the neighborhood. At least, I pretty much that's what was implied. They had been in the neighborhood a couple of months, and they just had a baby. It looks, I would say, probably if I was to guess, maybe 2 months old. Um, I don't think it really actually said. Um, it doesn't say how old it was, but I would say just recently born. I wouldn't say a year, but probably a couple of months. And the first part of the film really tells the story that they're a couple that just had a baby, but still are kind of trying to maintain their young lives pre being parents, which, if you ask me, is kind of unrealistic because normally when you transition into parenthood, um, people are committed to being parents. That phase of their lives is over, but for the sake of the movie, I guess we had to suspend our disbelief for it because um, you wouldn't go through the whole process of getting pregnant and stuff if you weren't really committed to it. But that's just that's just me. So the whole first half of the film really focuses on that. Um, you know, the main thing they talk about is the fact that it's more difficult for them to find time to have sex and go out partying because they have a daughter now. So um, they pretty much are trying to make that phase of their lives work, but it's just really not working. Um, One of their friends, I believe, it was I might be mistaken, but I believe it was Kelly's sister calls them and tries to get them to go to some sort of party, and um, at first they don't want to go because they don't want to bring they don't want they because they don't want to because it's like late at night and they need to hire a babysitter and stuff to take care of the baby whose name is Stella. Um, and pretty much then their friend just tells them to bring him with them. But so they rush and they try to pack everything they can um, with the baby stuff, but they get so wiped out they're just exhausted because that's what happens in parenthood. And they end up missing the whole thing, so it it didn't end up working out. Another thing that they do is, like I said, they try to have sex. That's like the literally the first scene you see in the movie, but Stella ends up watching them, so they try to turn her around, and it really doesn't end up working out very well. And then obviously another thing they try to do is um, there was a scene um, in the first part of the film where it's um, Mac and Sony Scony Schofield, who is a close friend and works with Mac, um, go out and smoke a joint, which is this scene is like very awkwardly funny because their boss, whose name is um I'm trying to see the boss's I'm trying to see the whose name is Bill um Wadzo um Kowinski Koski, but his name is Bill, and was asking him for some sort of file that Mac had been working on, and they try to allude that they've been working on this joint file, but really they just use a bunch of references saying that they're gonna go um, smoke pot, which was fairly obvious, and obviously the boss it went over pretty much over his head. So they were kind of talking about um how Kelly pretty much doesn't have, because her boobs are really huge. She pretty much only has sex with a shirt on because she doesn't want Mac to see them. So that was kind of like what the first half of the movie was focused on, was kind of yeah it was kind of Mac and Kelly's transition into parenthood, and that they're really not transitioning very well. Um, so that I'm gonna try to kind of base every story with the up down method. If I like it, I'll give it an up. If I don't like it, I'll give it a down. If I just thought it was middle of the road, I give it like a thumbs in the middle. I didn't really like the first half of the movie. I thought that it was just done very poorly. I didn't really like that they tried to that they were having a tough time transitioning into parenthood. So that part will get it down. That was just very unrealistic. I couldn't suspend my disbelief because, like I talked about before, when you have a kid, there's normally um like talking about that stuff. This story would work better if Stella was like still, if Kelly had still been pregnant and they were going through this, but they already had the kid, and it really just kind of made the storyline really weird. So then the next day after they showed the beginning portion, this was like day one of the movie in time frame. The next day, then the college, the frat house, um, Delta PSA Beta, um, move in, and this is pretty much a fraternity where it's a bunch of guys partying all the time. So obviously, Mac and Kelly expect that, so they want to go tell them that they should keep it down at night because they have a baby and everything. So, but they don't want to do it like being very uncool about it because they don't want to seem like the old um, couple that's uncool. So they kind of go try and do it. They bribe them with um, yeah, they plan on bribing them with pot and just pretty much tell them that they try to make themselves seem all cool, and they at first understand saying, "Yeah, we'll make sure to keep it down." Then obviously at later on in the night, um, we find out that these guys' names too. Well, it's a ton of people, but the people wanted it as Teddy Sanders, who's the president of the of this fraternity, um, and I actually messed up on something. Um, so I screwed up. The person that works with Mac is not named Scooney Schofield. It's Jimmy Belvins. I actually screwed that up. Um, but yeah, so and then we also have Schofield, who's like um pretty who is pretty well known in the fraternity. And then we have Pete um Guazzoli, who is the vice president of the fraternity. And those are kind of like the main three that they kind of show in the fraternity. Everybody else was just kind of background people, which must have been nice to be in that movie because you had a lot of background people in that movie, and they pretty much want to talk about how this fraternity has been legendary. They've had legendary parties, and they have it like on the Wall of Fame. Um, and they've done things like have the first toga party, having the first beer pong, having the first um, throw up in the boot, and then drinking alcohol afterwards. So um, they want to make history. They want to have like the best party of the year, um, and they want to have the best party of the year and be put on that Wall of Fame. So obviously they start to get too loud, and Mac and Kelly think they're being too loud, so they go try to quiet them down, and then Teddy says that they will, and Teddy and talks to Scooney, um, and wants to invite them in because he wants to make friends with them, so that way they can get him to kind of be on their side and can continue to have great parties. So Mac and Kelly go in, they invite them in, and Kelly has like this baby monitor that she uses throughout the beginning of the first film that she has to listen to in case the baby starts to fuss and stuff like that. Um, and then Mac and Teddy really get along, um, mainly because Mac eats a bunch of mushrooms and is just wicked high and out of it. And they talk about like um, you know they talk about things like um who plays Batman the best. They kind of go through all the Batmans, um, and then this actually becomes important. Teddy takes Mac up to his room where nobody supposed usually goes to during the parties, and he shows him these fireworks. That one time they lit off because they and burnt the house down, which ended up getting them strike one. At, and I guess in a fraternity, if you get too many strikes, the whole house can be shut down and everything. Um, and they could lose the house. Um, and then um, Mac and Teddy also take a piss and they have like a sword fight with each other. It was really not that funny. They have like a little bit of a serious conversation where Mac was telling him that these are like the best that he should enjoy these college years because these could be the best years of his lives because before you know it you're going to end up being the oldest person at the party and the young cool one at the party. And then Teddy says that you're actually really cool. Um, you're so cool that I would have walkie talkies and we would talk from 10 miles out. Um, and then Kelly, we find out was a we found out how Kelly and Mac met. Kelly was an exchange student from Australia, which is a weird, and was brought over there for for what was supposed to be a semester, and then they finally met and fell in love, and he convinced her to stay another semester, and then obviously we know what ended up happening. Um, and then we found out that Brooke um, um, and Teddy were dating, and they just pretty much saw each other, and then they became a thing. So that was interesting. Um, and then so then everything's all cool the first night. We're supposed to think that everything's gonna be fine, but then obviously we were all just fooled. To kind of this was all just to kind of fill time in the movie. Um, the next night they end up being really loud, and Teddy had told Mac not to call the cops if they get loud. You just call him, and Mac tries to call him like 10 times. They were up till like 4 in the morning, and then Kelly finally breaks and says that they should call the cops, and then eventually he doesn't want to at first because he made a promise not to, but Kelly then tells him to do it anonymously, so that's exactly what happens, and we end up meeting the cops. Um, and I am trying to find out whose name is Officer Wakens, and Officer Wakens tells them that they called, and um, then they try to act like they were just waking up because they didn't want the fraternity to know that they called. So um, Officer Wakens though says that they did call because we have caller ID. You can't just privately call the cops, which makes sense. And Teddy shows a video of Mac um, high off mushrooms, showing that they've partied with him before. So Mac takes his complaint back and really has no complaint. So then Teddy says that they started a war, um, and Mac and Kelly and Teddy even got walkie talkies for them, showing that he had been betrayed. So then it starts off this whole thing where they end up wrecking their house by TPing it and stuff and decorating it. They continue to be loud, and they also do things like um, getting the neighbors friends to be friends with them and stuff like that. So that was just really interesting right there. So then um, Mac and Teddy want to take them down. Actually, that's not what happens. The next scene, I believe this was like in the next scene, Mac and Teddy are cleaning up afterwards, and Stella ends up having what they thought was a balloon. Then we find out was actually a condom, and we meet the doctor whose name was um, Doctor Theodorakis. Um, and I did like the scene where he said his daughter had HIV, but it was kind of like, but then he kind of and then he kind of like takes a pause, and we were supposed to have thought that, but then he says it's the worst thing that could have happened from the situation, but we found out that the condom wasn't used, and the daughter is fine, and Kelly reacts. So I actually like that scene. So that will get up. I like that scene. I thought that was pretty funny. Um, but yeah, obviously I didn't I've been behind on the downs. I didn't really like the whole scene where the cops ended up getting called, and you know they did the awkward um and obviously um Teddy was just kind of upset about that he called the cops even though he was noisy, and obviously I down for just the way that Mac and Kelly were like reacting to this situation because it's just was very poor and wasn't very realistic. But yeah, let's talk about. So then, pretty much, this is when Mac and um, Kelly try everything they can to get away from the fraternity. At first, they try to sell their house, but um, the realtor, who was named was Wendy, um, pretty much tries to say that you'll get to keep half the earnings of what you made from what you put into the house. And since they put the whole all the money into this house, they can't sell the house. They can't get away from it. So they're gonna get the fraternity to leave. And I also want to say that I like the scene where um hold on, I want to get the actor's name um so that way I can with the Ben Stiller scene where it was a um where everyone had to dress as Ben Stiller and they were dressed as like all of his roles. I did like that scene. That scene will get enough. And um Pete was dressed as when he was Greg Fokker, and everybody else was just dressed in his other roles, and I just thought that was pretty clever, so that would get enough. Um, so then pretty much what happens is Kelly and Mac do everything they can to sabotage um, the fraternity to make it so that way they have to leave. Um, at first, they try causing their house to flood because Mac goes and chops the water pipe with an axe, and knowing that they're not going to have the money to fix it, what they do is pretty much they um, use their own dicks to make dildos and sell it. So obviously it didn't work. What was kind of funny about it was one of them couldn't get a boner and was supposed to shave, but one of them didn't shave. Who we found out his name was Garfield, who they call him Golf for short. Um, which obviously that joke gets used later on in the episode. And they have to like whip it off. That was pretty funny. So that gets um an up, and then they pretty much sell it, and they're able to not only repair the house but buy a hot tub. So then they all they did was really make the situation worse. So then they try um, to get him to have a strike, um, you know, because they've had a strike, and if they get so many strikes, they can be on probation. And the dean, who was Dean Carol Gladstone, she is a pretty famous actress. Um, at first, they try to use the condom to get them to strike, but it doesn't work. So then they try to get them to get a strike. I'm trying to remember what the next scene was actually. Um, because I know there was like something before they actually got there. There was something else, but pretty much then Kelly gets an idea from The Office where they showed an episode from the main and the main character talks about the whole thing of bros before hoes, which is like a common guy code. So, um, she tells Mac that they can make this, um, that they can turn Pete and um, they can turn Pete and Teddy against each other by having them fight by making it hoes before bros, which really didn't make any sense, but I guess we had to go with it. So pretty much what happens is they try to get together. Um, they try to get um, Pete together with Teddy's girlfriend, and um, the whole thing kind of and at first we were supposed to have thought that somehow this was gonna fail. So pretty much what happens is they had to do this quickly because they had to do it because they know if once they kiss they would want to go upstairs and have sex because that's what you usually do at a party, and they have to do it very fast. So Mac distracts Teddy by having a dance off with him, and um, Kelly goes over there and tries to get them together. Um, and they end up kissing. Um, which was one of the weird things is what didn't make any sense was she started kissing her and then she started kissing um Pete. So I was thinking that they were having shots so that she had just ended up getting drunk, but that's not really what happened. It was just really weird. And Mac tries to get Teddy to Teddy to look, but he first doesn't seize it because they were having a dance off. He just thought that um, Mac was doing one of the weird dance moves, but then when he looks, he sees that he slept with his girlfriend. Well, he sees that he's about to go sleep with his girlfriend. But I didn't like this scene at all. I didn't like the way it was done. I didn't really like that they had to make it so that they had to over explain it so much. I would just get a massive down. What will get up was I did like the way that the mood in the movie changed. Um, right after this scene, pretty much, because you could just kind of see that Teddy was kind of losing it. So that will get an up. But then I'm gonna retract the up and just make it a thumbs in the middle because few then the next scenes just kind of really which made me retract my up now that I think about it because what happened is um Teddy and Pete get into a fight and they grab each other's dicks instead of actually getting into a fist fight. And one of the things is that Pete has this ability to be able to pop a bone him anytime he pleases. So that's exactly what happens, and the whole thing ends up kind of going downhill. And then what happens is what got them the strike was it wasn't even this, because they just tried to turn them against each other so that way they wouldn't party anymore. What happens is, you know, because Mac and Kelly were allowed to be in the party, they started throwing stuff off the ceiling, and they throw like a beer keg, and it ends up hitting one of the professors, and um, he ends up still being alive. But then what happens is Garfield, um, Sconey or Scooney, I don't know how you say his name, and Teddy all go to the dean, and the dean's not happy um, that this happened. So they put him on probation, and Garfield, for some strange reason, ate a weed brownie before this because he did, which made no sense. And Pete's not interested in. Pete didn't attend this meeting, and Teddy's hurt by this. But then we find out that Pete's actually like really smart. Where he has like a 4.0 GPA, and Teddy only has like a 1.0 because somebody tries to offer him a job um, at AT&T, and he didn't know what that was. So and when he told him what his GPA was, um, you know, he was told that yeah, he was told wasn't accepted from the job, and you can see that Pete really wants to get his life together, um, but all that Teddy really cares about is partying and stuff like that. It was just really bad, and then and then it gets even worse because so and that Teddy and Pete just ended up making up like nothing happened because then they just remembered the guy code. Um, I guess what we were supposed to have taken to that is that Pete was just pissed in the moment. So they did like a bunch of um, really cheesy jokes that implied rose before hose. I didn't like any of these jokes. It was just very cheesy. So those all will get it down. And then we find out that so pretty much they're on probation. So if they make any noise or they have a noise complaint, they could get the third strike and get kicked out of the house. So you would have thought that the movie would have been over. The story was done. But there was more. Mac and Kelly pretty much go back to their lives um, as parents, and from what the takeaway you would have gotten from it is they don't really like transitioning into parents. So they actually I missed the most notable scene of the movie. Um, so Kelly had after shortly after this scene, Kelly had um, alcohol and was gonna breastfeed Stella, but because she's drinking alcohol, she can't because she's drank alcohol. She doesn't want that in the Stella system. So, but she needs to pump. But then because Mac is so hungover, he ends up dropping the pump and breaking it. So he ends up having to milk her, and he milks her, and the um milk squirts everywhere, and then he and then he makes like a ton of cheesy jokes talking about it. It was actually a really dumb scene, and it really wasn't very funny. Um, but then now that I've covered that, so then they kind of transition their lives back to the fraternity now being quiet, and you find out they really don't like their lives really that much. Mac's boss invites him over. Mac's boss Bill invites him for like a play date. Um, Kelly's like actually transitioning into motherhood, so they kind of want to go back to messing with the fraternity again because the fraternity is still kind of making noises, and the friend Jim doesn't really understand this because they won. Um, they won the war. They don't need to do this anymore, and I agreed with them actually. Like pretty much, they won. They won the war. They didn't. This movie could have just pretty much ceased to exist, but that's not what happened. Um, it yeah. They I didn't really think that made any sense at all. Like they won. They got what they wanted. The fraternity was basically quiet. Um, the rest of the movie, they were off probation. I didn't really like that at all. That they continued the movie when they already won, so that would get it down. Um, but then it gets even worse. So then they send um, Gary, who the fraternity calls ass juice, and he's been treated really badly by the fraternity. They've made him eat dog food, and they've just treated him really badly. Um, what happens is they try to send him in there to kind of as like an as an insider to try to take down the fraternity and show um, Teddy mistreating him. At first, he doesn't want to do it because um, Delta or Brotherhood. But then when Kelly bribes him with $1,000, says that she'll give him $1,000, he agrees to it, and the plan's going along really nicely. But then when Teddy and him go walk away privately, we find out that Teddy's actually being really nice to him, and Gary ends up spilling the beans about what happened, and he puts on the spy glasses and says that they've started a war that they can't finish. So he turns them off, and then it leads to all this stuff um, with the fraternity really messing with Mac and Kelly by breaking into Kelly's car and whipping the airbags out um, of the car, and they put him in Jim, and they even found out too that they were behind everything too. And they put him in Jim and Max chairs at work, and then they put him in the couches at home, and this leads to a fight between Mac and Kelly. I don't even know what the fight was really about. I guess the fight was who should be the grown up in the relationship. It was really stupid. It really didn't make any sense. So that all that stuff gets it down, and they eventually just ended up making up like the next scene. So it was just filling time. And then Pete actually thought he went too far because he comes from divorced parents. He doesn't want to see a couple fall apart. So you actually would have thought Pete would have gone to show humanity, but no, that's not what happened. So then Pete and Teddy get into another rift when um, Teddy's upset that it looks like they're gonna be off probation and that they're not gonna be able to you know get that plaque. And pretty much Pete's just like, you could just put the picture up there yourself. You don't really need to earn it. And he's like, but I didn't earn it. And then Pete pretty much says that we weren't the first fraternity to do beer pong. We weren't the first fraternity to do this. Um, so pretty much they get into another altercation because Pete's actually ready to graduate college. He's an adult now. He wanted to do this fraternity stuff when he was a freshman, but now that he's an adult, he's ready to get on with his life. And Teddy's afraid of what life looks like after in adulthood. That's why he wants to continuously mess with Mac and Kelly, which Pete is exactly right in this case. But obviously, then Teddy gets upset with them even more when Teddy brings up the fact that he slept with his girlfriend. And then Pete's like, I thought we moved past that, but then Teddy says that he was just trying to mask his feelings. So then, um, so that altercation wasn't very good either. Um, for Pete, but instead I found myself rooting against him, and I got to charge my computer, as you heard. Um, Actually, I don't even know who we were supposed to be rooting for in that case. I was rooting for Pete, but I think we were supposed to be rooting for Teddy, but Pete was actually right in this case. So then, um, actually, I got the names on. We were supposed to be rooting for Pete, um, but I ended up. We were supposed to be rooting for Teddy, but I ended up rooting for Pete. So then Teddy goes to make situations worse, talking about that just because we get our third strike, you think we're going to get kicked out. There's still going to be other fraternities. Things will still go on, and this will have to be an environment your daughter will have to live in. So obviously he knows they're going to want to react to this. So what happens is um, Pete, Jim, and Kelly. Sorry, not Pete. I'm messing up the names now. Mac, Jim, and Kelly devise this plan that make them think they're off probation. He devises this plan that he's gonna trick them, and the plan doesn't real. And the plan starts off working. They write this fake letter from the school that says they're off probation, um, and they make out these flyers and send it out to like a ton of homeless people and hookers and stuff like that, and like gigolos. Telling them that there's going to be a party at the house, so that way they could really get him kicked out. And they even like call into radio shows talking about it, pretending to be celebrities. Jim was pretending to be Barack Obama. Um, was one of the names, and it really wasn't very funny, so that will get it down. Um, and the party's finally back on. They think they're gonna find Mac and Kelly think they finally won, even though they had already won earlier in the film. But then we find out that Jim put like a little Jewish Hebrew in there on the symbol of the school, because then Pete and Teddy get suspicious, and Garfield gets suspicious about why so many homeless people and stuff are showing up. And they found out that flyers were made, and since everything's done online, no one really does flyers anymore, even though people kind of still use flyers. That really didn't make it. I think that was supposed to be a joke, but I didn't really think it was funny. So then they found out that the letter was in Hebrew, and it was supposed to be kind of like one of this game over things it meant, but because the game wasn't over yet, it didn't work. So that was really stupid. Jim, I don't know why he did that. So then they start shutting down the party. Officer Watkins gets called, and when Garfield comes out, the party's died down when he gets there, and when he finds out his name is Garfield, he refers him to the cat, which I did kind of like that they brought that joke up, so that would get it up. Um, and then when they realize that they're gonna get off the hook, Mac and Kelly want to go upstairs to Teddy's bedroom so that way they can get the party going again because he has like a box with all these switches that can control um, the speakers. But um, Teddy ends up being after going through this. Um, Pete and everyone are searching the house, and they do this really weird scene where Jim ends up kissing Mac, so that way they can disguise themselves as like college students because they're trying to get everybody out, or just as people at the party, which really didn't make any sense. It was just why didn't um why didn't Mac and Kelly disguise themselves as why did Mac and Kelly just kiss? Because that would have made more sense, but whatever. And then Kelly throws a bottle to distract Pete and everybody else this from them being able to go upstairs because they were going to go up the stairs, and Teddy ends up being up there. So Jim decides to jump off the balcony of the stairs to use them as a distraction. Um, and Pete and Kelly go upstairs. Well, actually, just Kelly goes upstairs. Well, at first um they don't know the combination, and of course the combination was 420, which I wasn't surprised about. And Kelly didn't know what that was because a lot of the stuff was Kelly, since she's Australian, she didn't know what 420 meant, and they did like a joke earlier on where she didn't know that the um that where she didn't know that Carol Gladstone was a dean, and that, well, what a dean was. She didn't know that it meant that she was the head of a college, which really didn't make any which didn't make any sense. They called them a chancellor in Australia, but she said she went to school in America. She should know what a dean is. That didn't make any sense at all. Um, but yeah, when they finally get it open, he has Kelly go up there and he tells Kelly that no matter what happens, don't open this door because then Jim stupidly gives up the fact that he was just used as a distraction. So then um, Teddy realizes this, and Teddy and Mac get into a fight. It was really lame, actually. I don't really want to break down the fight. It was comedic. They did like one thing with where they fought with Dodos, and Teddy stuck it down the mouth of Mac, and it wasn't very funny at all. And um, Kelly tries to open the box to get the speakers to turn on, but of course he has that locked up as well. And eventually, when she can't get that open, and Teddy's about to come ruin um, their plans, Kelly shoots fireworks off, so that tied into the movie, and shoots fireworks right at the cop, and the cop calls for backup. So then, pretty much, that means Mac and Kelly have finally win in the end, even though they had already won in the beginning of the movie. And the cops are about to come; they're about to get the third strike and get shut down, and um, Teddy tells Pete to leave, thinking that they're still on bad terms. But Teddy tells Pete that he wants him to leave because he doesn't want his future to get messed up. And they have like a nice bro moment where Pete apologizes for not thinking that the fraternity stuff really didn't matter anymore. Um, and they leave, and then I did like the scene when Watkins beat up Teddy with his nightstick. I thought that was kind of funny. Um, and then they transition back into normal life. Um, Mac and uh, Kelly realize that maybe being parents can be the next phase of their lives. They could be the best parents possible. They'll have some good moments. They'll have some bad moments. So that scene wouldn't have been bad, but I just didn't really like the dialogue in it, and it was just done really poorly. So that would just get it down. And then 4 months later, um, Mac is transformed into a dad, and we find out Pete's a male model because his GPA was so low. Um, he didn't end up doing well. But I was taught in college that if your GPA really doesn't mean anything, they don't really care about your GPA. Once you graduate, you graduate. You could have the lowest GPA, and it really doesn't matter. I'm assuming if it's a 1.1 though, it really isn't probably all that great. But I think he probably just flunked out of school and ended up just getting the male model job. I don't know what he's a male model at. I don't know if it was like at some sort of store, and they try to do this funny scene where Mac tries to be a male model himself, and the whole story is that Mac it doesn't is not in good shape at all, and um, Teddy is in great shape. And we didn't really find out what happened with anybody else in the fraternity. We didn't find out what happened with Garfield. We didn't end up finding out what happened with Scooney, and we didn't end up finding out what happened with Pete. So I didn't like that at all. We only found out about, um, you know, we only really found out about Teddy from the fraternity. I didn't really like that at all, so that would get it down. And then the end of the movie is Mac and Kelly finally going into parenthood. They get a like a Skype call, or a FaceTime call, but I think it was a Skype call pretty much from Jim and his wife, whose name is I have to look it up because I forget. Um, I don't remember his wife's name, but we find out. But throughout the movie, they had talked about how they had talked about how he had gotten divorced with her, and then at the end when he attacks Scooney, the guy that she was sleeping with, and um, they get back together. They want to have a kid because for some strange reason they randomly threw in there in like one scene where Jim was interested in having a kid, and they thought that was going to fix all their problems in marriage, and we find out they just party all the time, and Mac and Kelly make a stellar calendar, and the movie kind of ends with a montage of showing all of the outfits that she's gonna wear. They do a Breaking Bad reference with her dressed up as um, Eisenberg, eating what looks to be blue meth, but it really isn't. It's just um, blue Gatorade frozen. But I like that. But I like me some Breaking Bad. I like Breaking Bad references. That will get it up. And the ending scenes though, they get it down. And that was pretty much the end of the movie. The movie itself drew. Um, I have how much the movie made. It made 207.7 million dollars. I'm sorry, I read it wrong. It drew $270.7 million because that would be really bad. Um, so, um, I mean, you could make the response that, um, so it actually did well. Um, it did well for a movie, $270.7 million. That's really well. Um, for an $18 million movie, but for an $18 million movie, um, I don't know how really well that is, but $270 million is really well to do for a movie, so that's really well. And let's talk about what I thought of this movie. Then I'll talk about what everybody else thought because my feeling on it is about the same. I didn't like this movie at all. I don't think this is even like close though to one of like the worst movies I've ever seen, but it's still not good. Um, I don't think it was really that funny. And it just kind of felt, and I just maybe because I don't really like, um, maybe because too like it didn't really feel like the movie was very well thought out. The movie really should have been over within an hour, maybe even like 45 minutes, because the what really made it hard was they pretty much ended when Mac and Kelly finally got them to be quiet. They had already won, so it was kind of tough to really take the movie seriously. And it just the storylines I didn't really like in this movie, the characters I didn't really like. Um, Mac and Kelly was supposed to be the good guys, I guess, in the movie, but then they ended up kind of really being the villains, and Teddy was like the villains. I think the real person that had some sanity was Pete, and He really didn't play that much of a factor in the movie. It was really tough to kind of really root for anybody. And what I like about a movie, typically, is that the characters have gone through some type of change by the end of the film. And towards the end of the film, I can't really say that happened. You could say maybe Mac and Kelly finally transitioned into um, being parents and stuff like that, but I can't really. But they should have done that months ago. They did. They not within 4 months. They where they decided, okay, we're gonna be parents now. They should have done that right when Stella was born, and then we could. Pete didn't go through any change. Sorry, not Pete. Teddy didn't go through any change. He was pretty much the same character at the end of the movie. And then Pete, same thing. He didn't really go through any change. I would guarantee you, he was probably like this the whole movie. It just didn't show it until the middle of it. Um, Nobody really went through any change in this movie. Everybody just kind of was the same character by the end of the movie. So I didn't really like that at all. And the jokes they were trying to tell really weren't that funny. Some of them were like I did chuckle at some things, but just really wasn't all that good. I've just so as I've said, I've changed my grading system. I'm just gonna do letter grades now. If I had to give this movie a letter grade, I'm probably gonna give it an F. It really wasn't good. It's not even I wouldn't even say it's like one of those movies that's like bad. You have to see it because those movies can be really fun to watch. This is just like a movie that you should avoid at all costs. This was not a good movie at all. It's not even like a movie that's famously bad because the ones that famously are bad can end up being good in the long run. This one just um, was not good. And as for what other people thought about it, when you go through like the critics and the fans, because I kind of like based on them upon the fans agree with me. Um, the everybody who went and saw this movie, I and I've looked at the reviews. They're all um, ones and twos. I don't see one person that um, liked this movie. But at the same time, the critics didn't even praise this movie, but they gave it an approval rating. It got like um, a 7 out of 10 somehow. How does that happen? That just kind of goes to show you that sometimes what critics have to say, mean more than what the fans have to say because I guess they think that they have more credibility since they've reviewed movies longer. Now, some people probably wouldn't, but I don't agree with this at all because there's no way this movie is even worth the time. The movie's an hour is about an hour and 36 minutes and I don't know and like 4 seconds I think. It's not and it's not worth sitting through the whole thing. I just don't really like this movie at all. The fact that a second one was made, um, is mind boggling, and I know sometimes there are some cases where the sequels are better than the original. I'm afraid of what the sequel is going to look like. Is the sequel going to be even worse than the original? Um, I don't think it will be. I think what also hurt this movie was um, that it really wasn't realistic. I mean, some movies can be a little bit unrealistic, um, but if but sometimes if it's done well, it can be really good. This one just really wasn't that realistic. Um, Comedy movies I know typically aren't realistic, but this one I just really couldn't suspend my disbelief for what was going on. I really couldn't suspend my disbelief, like I said, that Mac and Kelly all of a sudden just um, decided to be parents 4 months afterwards, and that they didn't want to transition into parenthood. Had had Kelly still had been pregnant in this movie, would have understood it, but but I really didn't understand that at all. Um, and also, I also didn't um, like obviously when the fraternity being really loud. how the way they would handle that would have just gone down completely differently. It's really bad. So yeah, this is just a movie that's if you ever plan on watching it, don't. It's completely skippable. But that's besides the point. Let's talk about it's crazy too. This movie won um awards too. Like well, they were nominated for awards. I'm sorry. Um it's just crazy because I don't like it. I don't like these movie at all. But let's go over the cast, and then I'm just gonna end the video. Seth Rogen plays Mac Radner. Zac Efron plays Teddy Sanders, which um he actually does fine in his role, I guess I'll say. Rosa Bryn, who was nominated for Best Actress for this movie, plays Kelly Radner, and Christopher Mines Plaz, I don't know how you say his last name, is plays Scooney Schofield, and Dave Franco plays Pete um, Regazzoli. I think I said it better that time. Ike Bowen Holtz plays Jimmy Belvins. Um, Carla Gallo plays Paula. Um, Flade, who's Jimmy's ex-wife, who I just talked about toward the end of the movie. Craig Roberts plays Gary, who's Ash Juice, or whose nickname is Ash Juice. Jared Carmichael plays Garfield, or Golf for short. Lisa Kudrow plays Dean Carol Gladstone. Obviously, Lacey Kudrow, I think that's how you say that. Lacey Kudrow was known as Phoebe from Friends, and she did well in that role, and that's what she's the most known for. She's obviously been in other stuff, but that's what she's the most known for. Um, Hannibal Buress played Officer Wakens. Houston Sage played Brooke Shy. I believe that was Pete's girlfriend in the movie, but I might be wrong. And Allie Coburn played Whitney. I don't remember who that is. Jason um, Mantzoukas plays Dr. Theodore Kiss, which I think he did a pretty good job in that role. Ellis and Zoe Vargas played Stella Radner. Um, Brian Hutsky plays um, Bill Wazowski, who's Mac's boss. Randall Park plays Rep, which I have no clue who that is. Liz Kagowski plays Wendy the Welter wheel the Realtor, and then Nick Offerman plays Mr. Schofield, and Megan Lowley plays Mrs. Schofield, and then obviously there was some extra. They were in the deleted scenes. I didn't watch the deleted scene movies, the movie with deleted scenes, so yeah. And then Andy Samberg, Akiba Schaefer, Jorma Tacone, Adam Devine, Blake Anderson, Anders Holm, Kyle Newacek, and John Johnson all have like cameo appearances in the Delta PSA as former Delta PSA members. So that's pretty much the end of this review. I didn't think this movie would take me over an hour to review. I thought it would take me a half hour, but there was just a lot that happened. I didn't even really put forth much effort into this because usually, if movies don't put forth efforts in my mind to be good movies, which I think they actually, I can't really say they probably didn't, but it just wasn't for my liking. But I just don't really put forth a lot of effort into things I don't really think are worth my time, and then I probably just wasted my time reviewing this. So at some point today, I'm gonna come back and I'm going to review. Um, I'm going to review the second Neighbors 2. Why I'm gonna watch the second one, I don't know, but I'll watch the second one and give you guys that review. So that's pretty much it, guys. Make sure you guys like, comment, and share this video so people will watch it. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel for more content and click on the bell so that way every time I upload a video, You guys will get the notifications for it. Make sure you guys do the same thing for my CM Brothers YouTube channel because now I'll be posting there a lot more. And that's pretty much it, guys. Talk to you later.